The province is looking to redefine care for Ontario's aging population. After extensive consultations with 5,000 Ontario seniors, 2,500 stakeholders and more than 1,000 caregivers, the Provincial Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care has released its Living Longer, Living Well report, which sets out a strategy to make that happen. And joining us now with more, Deb Matthews, Ontario's Minister of Health and Long-Term Care. She's also the MPP for London North Centre. And Samir Sinha, Provincial Lead of the Ontario's Seniors Strategy and Director of Geriatrics at Mount Sinai and the University Health Network. Good to have both of you back here in the studio. Let's, you can say thank you or something like that.
Okay, thanks.
Great to be here. That's what I knew you wanted to say. Let's bring up this graphic just to get people up to scratch on what you folks have been dealing with. Here's our aging province. There are 1.9 million seniors in the province today. That's 14.6% of Ontario's total population. However, seniors account for nearly half of all health care spending. 14.6% of the population, but half the spending on health care. And it's expected that that number of Ontario seniors will double within 20 years. So this is the proverbial ticking time bomb that we hear so much about. And therefore, let me get you to start, Dr. Sinha, by telling us what the main recommendations of your seniors strategy are to deal with this.
I think the idea was that this report really thinks about aging as a challenge, for us, but really as an opportunity, because our healthcare system was designed at a very different point when people were often younger and needed very different types of services. So really this report was focusing on two main aspects. How do we help those older adults who have complex health issues? How do we support them to stay healthy and independent in their own homes as long as possible? But also, how do we also support more older Ontarians who are living well into longer age? How do we support them live long and happy lives? So the recommendations certainly do focus around healthcare in terms of improving our primary care system, the way we provide home and community care services, our long-term care services, but it also recognizes the social determinants of health. So thinking about poverty amongst older Ontarians, thinking about housing and transportation, because they told me that's equally important to them, but also making sure that our communities are elder-friendly. So a lot of recommendations, but thinking in a comprehensive way of how we support older Ontarians in the future and currently.
Minister, these demographics have been not unknown to anybody for a quarter of a century. It feels as if we are kind of, and I don't say we Ontario, I mean the world, is kind of behind in getting there. How come?
So I would say that as our population has aged, and the population is aging now, we've added things like more home care and so on. But this demographic reality is approaching us quickly. And it's not like when baby boomers turn 65, all of a sudden they're going to need a whole lot more from our healthcare system. But as we age, we are going to need more and more. So I think our healthcare system isn't providing the best coordinated care today. So we got to get it right today, but more importantly, we've got to really transform the system so that it's providing the best possible quality of care and get the best value for our healthcare dollars as our population ages.
I want to touch on one of the relatively more controversial things this government has introduced, which is income-based home care. Can you just tell us how that would work?
So the first aspect was picking up on the minister's point here is that we have a demographic and fiscal challenge, and the idea we could say that cost, if we just do the same thing that we're doing right now, is going to be $24 billion, but we have an opportunity to do things differently. So Denmark, for example, what they did was when they were facing the exact same situation back in 1980, they shifted more home care to more home and community care. And by doing that, they're able to avoid building more expensive long-term care homes. They were even able to close hospital beds, for example, because people just didn't even need them anymore. So it's the idea of shifting to home and community care. So when we started talking about different ideas about how do we finance care for the future, how do we provide more home and community care, the minister said, if you're going to go and provide me recommendations, I want you to explore all the different possibilities out there, because this was a serious report. This was not an exercise in self-congratulation. So really there are three options. Right now, we know there are people who need more home and community care than can certainly get it right now. That's why the 4% increase is helping to actually meet some of that need, but there still is more need out there. And we know that in future, we're going to need more home and community care. So really, as far as I see it, we have three options, and this is what I spelled out in the report. One of those options got a lot of attention, and that was the idea of looking at what the majority of Canadian provinces and other OECD nations have done, is by creating an accessible and universal care system where those who need whatever whatever care but who can't afford it will get it, and those who can pay a little bit can actually make a bit of a contribution. But the other options are there too. We might say, let's close more hospitals. Let's not have as many nurses. You know, we can make choices like that, which I don't think many of us want.
Okay,
and the other option is we could just raise our taxes.
Well, I was going to say, it sounds like you've given 3 options, none of which are particularly lovable. However, on this issue of income-based home care, Minister, I want to read you something here. This is from Natalie Mehra, who I know you know from the Ontario Health Coalition, who wrote the following. Universality is a core principle for healthcare. As more and more services are moved out of hospital, it is imperative that Ontarians insist that the Ontario government not abandon this principle in home and community care. The proposal to create a means-tested home care system explicitly threatens privatization rather than upholding the equity principles of the Canada Health Act when it comes to home and community care services for the elderly. Is she right?
No, I don't think she is right. I think that...
You guys are simpatico on so many things. Do you think she's wrong on this?
I think that the reality is, and your viewers will know this, a lot of people caring for seniors or seniors themselves do purchase a service now. So it's not like we have a 100% government-funded home care system. We don't.
Right.
So it's not that big a leap. I want everybody to get the care they need, to keep them out of hospital, to keep them out of long-term care, to have that care at home whenever possible. We've just recently, in the last budget, started income testing for drugs for seniors. So if you're at a very high income level, a single person income over $100,000, a couple over $160,000, we're asking you to chip in a bit for your drugs.
What's the reaction to that been?
Nothing.
Come on.
Nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing. I thought that we would have real reaction. People are okay with it. People get it. They understand that. So the status quo is not an option. The status quo is not sustainable. So asking people at higher incomes to contribute a bit, I don't think is unreasonable, but I tell you, we haven't made a decision on it. It's not something we're moving on. It is a recommendation. It has sparked some conversation, and I think that's a healthy conversation to have.
But presumably, this is going to happen, right? You wouldn't be here talking to us about it if it weren't on.
Samir wrote his report independent of me. So these are his recommendations.
And the recommendation was to explore and to have a conversation. So the full report, you know, those who read the full report will understand that there were 5 principles that every recommendation adhered to. Was that we wanted to protect access, equity, quality, value, and choice. And the problem that we have right now with our current system that I pointed out was our community care access centers, they're strapped. And right now, you may only be able to get 1 or 2 hours if you're a low needs patient for services, and you may need a few more hours. So countries like Australia that just reformed their system that allowed, with a little bit more money coming in from those who could participate, by having that, and BC and many other provinces have run the same sort of system, they allow people to get as much as they need, and those who can't pay at all don't pay anything. But those who can make a small contribution, and in British Columbia, for example, you can tax deduct any of those contributions you make to the system. So BC's been running the system for over 20 years. The majority of provinces have been running the system, and they actually have very effective home and community care systems as well. So the goal is, this is not a threat on universality. In fact, I think this actually strengthens it.
If you live long enough, there will probably come a time in your life when you can no longer live on your own. Whether you choose to live in a retirement home or need a higher level of care, many options are available. But how does the province ensure that the facilities are striking the right balance of care, quality, and safety? Here's a look at residence life, senior style. How well do you think the general Ontario public understands the various options and what's out there when it comes to elder care in this regard?
Sure. I don't think that people really understand what's out there. I think that people don't pay a lot of attention. There's going to be people watching today who are going to, be viewers who are going to watch this and say, oh, that doesn't really relate to me, put it in the back of their head and never think about it again for another 10 years until they're parent or they need care. And then there's the other ones who are all of a sudden thrust into these positions and are finding themselves, oh my goodness, now I have to find out. It's a very complicated system. Long-term care, I think you were saying that there is an age limit. That age limit is actually 18 to go into a long-term care home. So we see the range of people who are, very young people. We might see read about in the paper where a family can't take care of a severely autistic child or something, they end up in long-term care, right up to the elderly, frail person with dementia.
So we should not assume this is only for older people.
We should not assume it's for only for older people. And unfortunately, we're seeing more and more people pushed into long-term care who really should be in supportive housing, group homes, other kind of housing. The retirement home sector, in fact, is 65 and older. That's actually in the legislation. It's a majority of people would be 65 and older. There will be some younger people, but if the majority are under the age of 65, could be providing exact same services, it's not a retirement home. So there's a real difference in that. When people go to look for long-term care or retirement homes, they have to understand are tenancies, so they come under the Residential Tenancies Act. There are very special rules with respect to retirement homes under the Retirement Homes Act, and some under the Residential Tenancies Act, as well as they're called care homes. But they're tenancies, so you have to think of
by all the same rent review issues and all that.
Rent review and all of that. There's some special rules around the services, but people really have to understand that. And what would you expect your landlord to do? Because in effect, that's what they are. Whereas the long-term care, you're applying through CCAC. It's government funded. You are paying a co-payment. Even 99.9% people pay around at least $1,200 or above.
$1,200 a month as a co-payment?
As a co-payment, yes.
Okay, how well do you think we're doing at getting the right people into the right and appropriate facilities?
I don't think we're doing a very good job because right now there is such a push on the system. Most people are not able to plan, for example, for long-term care. What happens is there's a serious event, the person's been at home, maybe they're being cared for by a loved one, or they have a stroke, something happens, they end up in hospital. When they're in hospital, there's a real pressure to push them out. They're called alternative level of care. They're seen as bed blockers, and there's a real push to get them out back into the community, perhaps into a retirement home. The long-term care beds aren't available because the lists are too long. So people are either going to long-term care homes that don't have waiting lists because potentially they may have a bad reporting record, they're struggling, there's issues perhaps, or they go into a retirement home because that's what they're told they have to do, and that's private pay. These are people who really should be in long-term care in many cases and are going to retirement home sector, which is really not in most cases what they need. And if you're looking at long-term care and you're ending up in retirement home, you're probably paying $4,000 to $6,000 a month for that level of care.
Okay, let's open it up and on that last question. Candace, how well are we doing at getting the right people into the appropriate facilities?
I do agree. However, it is changing. There is a shift happening. We're not getting the inappropriate placements. CCAC has been more stringent, and actually there's been a diversion of the waiting list. And what we're seeing is we're not getting those placements anymore. But there are also really good things happening in long-term care with other clients. And I know there's one example where a facility shut down, and that long-term care home worked with the community sector to bring those clients in because there was nowhere else for them to go. And so they worked together, and the community supported that home, and it's been in place for almost 8 years, and it's been very good for those clients. So there's examples out there of where the long-term care has been the only solution for that community, and I think it largely depends on what the status is as well with the ALC in that area.
ALC?
And the alternate level of care.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it depends a lot on which community it is, which home it is.
We need a rule here today, friends.
No acronyms.
No acronyms. You got it. You got it. CCACs, ALCs, too much going on here. Donna, how about it? The right people into the right places. How tough's that?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult. And it's very difficult to assess a senior when they're in a hospital because they've come to the hospital in some kind of acute state. It's not just because they're old that they got sent to the hospital. There's something going on with them. And what happens to a senior when they're in the hospital, and sometimes in a hospital bed for a couple of days, they become frail. They're not up walking around. It becomes very difficult for them, and they lose some of their function fairly quickly. So to be assessed for long-term care or that you need a whole lot of support can happen quite easily to a senior.
There have been we're talking about regulations here. There have been some new regulations over the last 5-6 years. And let's just put this graphic up and we can sort of take people through this, because the government moved to rewrite the regs for all of these facilities. First, they replaced the Charitable Homes Act the Homes for the Aged and the Rest Homes Act, and the Nursing Homes Act with a single piece of legislation called the Long-Term Care Homes Act. That was 2007. Came into force in 2010. Next, for the first time, legislation has been enacted to regulate retirement homes in the province with the Retirement Homes Act of 2010. And finally, the province created a Ontario Personal Support Worker Registry, which got off the ground last year. This is a lot, Donna, a lot of change on paper. How does it actually affect the way people live?
Well, legislation is very new in our sector, as you said, declared in 2010. And at the moment, retirement homes were required to be licensed as of this past July, so July 2012. So it's something that our sector is still getting used to, and there's a lot of education that has to go on in our sector. The Ontario Retirement Communities Association is prepping its members to ensure that they're educated with the new regulations and how to meet the new regulations and make sure that they stay in compliance of all that they're now expected to do.
Let me go to Owen on that. Presumably this additional level of regulation was brought in to address problems, concerns that clients had in the past. Again, you represent the people who work in these places. Yep. Does it seem to you like things are improving as a result of these regs?
Well, it's a great question, and I've had an opportunity over the last couple of weeks to go out and to speak to people on the front line in nursing homes around the province. And in retirement homes, and to talk about what we have seen in the last 6 months in terms of the impact of the changes that government has been pushing through regulation and through a series of recent announcements promising more funding for care and long-term care facilities. And what, in fact, we have seen over the last 6 months is that the amount of care available to seniors and others in these facilities is dropping. So the amount of hours of care that people are receiving has declined.
Why?
In many cases over the last 6 months. Well, it's a great question. Why? Why, if there's a commitment on the part of the province, if funding into these facilities is increasing, why is care dropping? Why are staffing levels dropping? And I think the first thing I would say is that the province needs to be asking that question. And right now, there is no transparency, there is no reporting, there is no requirement attached to that funding that compels the folks who operate these homes to report how many hours of care are people receiving.
Report to whom?
Report to the province that provides funding in the cases of nursing home facilities. I mean, you sort of alluded to the fact that one way or another, as Ontarians, we pay either through tax dollars or directly for these services. So where is the accountability? And what you'll see is that in other jurisdictions across North America, in places like Saskatchewan and Alberta, across the pond in Europe, there's a requirement not just to report the hours of care, but to meet a minimum threshold, a minimum standard of care across these types of facilities.
Jane,
that doesn't exist in Ontario.
Let me go to Jane on that. Is there inadequate oversight or regulation in this area?
Absolutely. We have the Long-Term Care Homes Act, which had a lot of promises with respect to what it was going to do. It took these other pieces of legislation, a big manual, put it all together. There wasn't a lot new. There's some new things, but what it did do is put in a new compliance system. Unfortunately, it has been reactive instead of proactive. They are doing mostly complaint-driven or critical incident-driven reporting. So they only go out and do inspections when there's something has happened. They were supposed to do annual inspections, full inspections. As of April last year, they had done 53, which was in about a 2-year time frame out of the 600 odd. So it's gone from mandatory once a year. They've determined how they were going to be talking about what an annual inspection was, so that's been a problem. In the retirement home sector, we don't have the Retirement Home Regulatory Authority. That's the group that oversees the retirement homes, does inspections, licensing. They don't do inspections yet. That isn't coming in until 2014. And when you look at things like how many hours are you getting in a retirement home, that's all supposed to be part of the information you're getting. When we represent clients and go and ask homes, well, how many hours is this? They refuse to give it to us. They won't tell us like how many hours you're getting for a bath, or if you're getting 4 hours of care, how do they count that? And so there's not a lot of...
I want to give you two a chance to respond, but before you do, let me, because we all remember, I think, well, it was, I think a few years back now already, the Toronto Star did a pretty big takeout series on this issue, and this was from their editorial, which came in last fall's edition of the paper in November 18th. The province's Liberal government bragged that it was taking strong action to protect seniors by creating a Retirement Homes Act, a new set of rules to be enforced by an oversight body. Now, just months after the Retirement Homes Regulatory Authority began issuing operating licenses, it's become clear that the rules are weak and useless for those who can't complain, mostly the vulnerable poor. The authority has just 12 inspectors to investigate 677 retirement homes, but only if those residents are brave enough to lodge a complaint. Even then, the basic new rules fall short of proper oversight, especially since the privately owned homes can sell complex medical care. Even in old age, a Darwinian existence prevails. If you hope to live for, say, 5 more years and don't have $500,000 in the bank, your survival may be dependent on the benevolence of others. What a terrifying end. Okay, Candace, you first.
I'd like to just add some context to the last two conversations. First with the staffing and the minimum staffing. I don't think realistically we can do that, and the reason being that each resident is basically funded on their capabilities and their individual case mix measure, their case mix index. And for us to go to a certain level of care, of hours of care, you're not being adequately serving those needs on an individual basis. In long-term care, the care is very individualized, and the funding is now focused on that with the shift from the Alberta system to the new MDS-RI. What the new MDS-RI system does, the funding system, is it actually makes you look at that individualization a little bit clearer. So to put in a set number of hours per day just wouldn't work.
So, I mean, I think those are very valid points. I mean, and I think we've been hearing from the industry now for more than a decade about the fact that essentially it's got everything in hand. It's developing the care plans for individuals. We should simply leave it in the homes of the companies that operate these facilities. But I think what we've seen from the exposés and the Toronto Star and what we saw in the recent report from the province's nursing home task force, which the industry and others participated in, is that there is serious neglect taking place inside the facilities where we care for the elderly in the province.
Some of it, I hasten to add, perpetuated by your members.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that there are certainly cases and incidents of abuse that have been documented around the province, and I think collectively there's a view there should be absolutely zero tolerance. That should be rooted out and punished.
Solution to this to nationalize the whole system?
No, not at all. But Steve, at the moment we have a publicly funded system in Ontario. We're pumping in public dollars, and we're not getting the accountability to the province. We're not getting the transparency around hours of care. So, for example, if you were to go not far from where we're sitting right now, to home at York Mills and Don Mills here in Toronto, you'd find that they'd cut the staffing levels quite significantly over the last few weeks. I received a memo this morning that was distributed by another long-term care facility on February 1st, announcing severe cuts to staffing levels and care levels at another facility. Well, I think this is the key question, because it's not happening in isolated cases. We're seeing it on a systemic basis, and we're seeing that challenge of neglect happening across the system.
Many of us spend a lot of time planning for retirement. We scrimp and save to prepare for those golden years, but we're living longer, and that leaves many wondering whether their retirement funds will be substantial enough to go the distance. Now, pension advocate Gerda Kagi tells us about the importance of changing how we plan for retirement in our ever-changing labor market. Then we'll move beyond the pocketbook and take a look at planning how you'll actually live into your elder years. we seem to be entering a phase in our country's collective life where defined benefit pension plans are going to be a thing of the past, and defined contribution plans, which are obviously not as generous and not as secure, are the thing of the future. And what do we think about that?
Not very much. Sorry. Where we had defined benefit plans, we had unions. They brought it. Wonderful. Defined contribution, no guarantee what you're going to retire with. The year you retire, the stock market could have crashed. What are you going to be left with? Very little. And I think it's a serious flaw, but I also think the Canada Pension Plan has to be looked at. So hopefully we can touch on that.
Well, let's pick up on that. What do you want to see done with the CPP?
Well, the trouble with CPP, it was based not to provide a good pension in your old age. It was to be 1/4 of the average wage of workers in the country. 1/4, which meant about 2 years ago, about maximum $12,000. You can live $12,000?
Nobody can.
Exactly.
But it was never.
And that's the maximum. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, but I just say they would say that it was never intended to be the sole source of income upon which you were going to, depend for your entire retirement.
Absolutely. But the idea was it should never be a significant amount. And when you look at other countries, Iceland, Faroe Islands, Denmark, Sweden, the whole idea was older people shouldn't be in poverty. So they targeted between 40 to 60% of the average wage. And financial planners tell you to plan for 70% of what you were earning before you retire. Well, where are you going to get 70% if the maximum of the CPP is about $1,020 a month, right? Then you have old age security.
Well, don't go there yet, because I want to ask about. We hear this comparison with Denmark quite frequently, actually, that the Danes have got it figured out.
The Faroe Islands are even better, if you know where they are, and I'm sure you do.
Don't tell us. Where are the Faroe
They're
Islands?
in the Atlantic between Iceland and Norway.
Okay, so
near towards Greenland, but it's Faroe Islands, Iceland, Greenland.
And what are they doing so well that we're not doing
60%.
How do they fund that, though?
They've planned ahead, and they're, as a society, like the Danes, they said, we don't want poverty in the old age.
So it's a matter of
investment.
Upping the premiums and upping the takeout.
We only pay 9.9% towards CPP. By the way, the Americans pay 12.4%. And they also...
For Social Security?
Yeah. They also have, but they also have a higher level that you can pay at. Our level is the average wage. 51,000, 50,000 and a quarter. It's not going to give you much, but you're paying for it. You can't pay more. And the assumption, of course, was when they did the Canada Pension Plan, I remember Tom Kent and Pearson writing about this, but they felt we as workers would be able to supplement. But that assumes you're going to have a good wage, you can afford to put money aside, and we know people can't.
When people think of retirement, the first thing that they tend to think about is money. Have I adequately saved for that time of my life? But rarely do they consider what they will actually do, how they will actually live once they leave their working lives. What makes for a good retirement? Here now to help us answer that question, Samir Sinha, Provincial Lead with the Ontario Senior Strategy and Director of Geriatrics at Mount Sinai and University Health Network. Susan Eng, Vice President for Advocacy at CARP, the Canadian Association of Retired Persons. Josh Matlow, Chair of the City of Toronto Senior Strategy Subcommittee and Toronto City Councillor for Ward 22. And Louise Binder, retiree and healthcare advocate, and we're happy to welcome all four of you here to TVO today. I want to start, Susan, let's get started with this. Do people actually give retirement planning beyond the pocketbook enough thought?
No, absolutely not. Because so many people are consumed with what they're doing and loving it, then not doing it is suddenly something quite alien to them. And quite often people, of course, worry about money, whether or not they're going to be able to keep up the same lifestyle and so on. But then they have other challenges, including health challenges, including filling their time, feeling useful. They don't realize how important their work was, how much they defined themselves according to what they achieved at work. Whether they liked their job or not, they were still defined by that work. So I think there's a huge psychological shift, and it could be why this generation of, boomers approaching being seniors are people who keep working. They keep working because they love their jobs, they have a lot to contribute, they don't see a good reason to stop.
And if you can, why not keep going?
Well,
Is that the idea?
So, and I think that what is changing, however, is what people are demanding from their jobs. They try to make more of it, not just punching the clock, but choosing something they actually want to do. They might change a job. That's something new. People think, well, you work 25 years in one place, get to watch and leave. In fact, people use that opportunity to do something else that they've always wanted to do, completely different out of their discipline altogether. Something they've always wanted to do, something that uses an entirely different part of their sensibilities. And we're finding that a lot as well among our members and others.
Louise, I want to bring you in here because this is obviously not an academic discussion for you. You got some health challenges earlier in life and found you had to retire. How old were you when that happened?
43.
So well earlier than most of us want to do it.
It was a profound tragedy for me. I mean, I really had to grieve the loss of what really I used to define myself, which was the work that I did. And it
was what? What did you do?
I'm a lawyer, and I was doing human resources work in large companies, and I was a vice president of human resources for international companies.
And then you got sick and you found you couldn't do it anymore.
Exactly.
So what'd you do?
I made some choices. One was, you won't like to hear this, I decided that one thing I was not going to do was to sit around watching television.
Oh, that's a terrible decision.
I know. And I wasn't going to spend my life at the computer either, that I was going to somehow find meaningful things to do within the health challenges that I had that were reasonable within those challenges.
How long did it take you to sort of figure out, I have to redefine, as Susan was suggesting, who I am and what I want to do?
Took quite a while, and we don't realize in a practical sense that having a job gives you know what you're going to be doing with your time, and suddenly to have to make those decisions yourself. What am I going to do today? We think it sounds simple, but in fact we're used to somebody else actually defining how we will spend our time.
Well,
and when we suddenly have to do it, it's what will I do? And to be self-motivated is very difficult at the outset.
Josh, can you weigh in on this from your vantage point of having watched it at City Hall and being in charge of the sort of the senior strategy at City Hall? From your personal experience, anecdotal experience, seeing constituents, seeing people across the city, how are they doing?
It depends who you ask. More and more of us, certainly the baby boom generation, is coming to an age over the next 10, 20 years where they're going to need our city to be proactive now. This is why we're preparing a strategy for them. But there are many seniors today who are struggling to even get around the city, let alone access services. So I'll give you an example. On Mount Pleasant Road, very nearby the station, the bus service was cut only a couple of years ago during the evenings. There are 4 or 5 seniors' homes there. There's a small library that also has been considered for closure. And unfortunately, the city for far too long has just looked at whether it be how many riders get onto the bus or how many books are circulated through the building, rather than looking at the context of who uses them. And ironically, I even held a transit town hall recently where I had a senior call me and say, I live on Mount Pleasant, I can't come because I won't be able to take the bus home. And there are also many seniors who go to the local library because it's their community center, and it really is it has a big positive impact on isolation in the neighborhood too. So it really depends if you have access to transit, if you have recreation or libraries or other community spaces nearby, if you have access to education, etc.
Let me jump in. When they came to you with those complaints that if you take this bus service off, this will be the result, what'd you do?
What I did is I actually rode the bus and took numbers myself. My assistant actually went and did a tally to make sure that the numbers that the TTC was using were correct. I also did town halls in the area, went to all the buildings, spoke with the residents, and I went and made a deputation at the Toronto Transit Commission. I told them not only were the numbers were wrong, never mind even the context.
Lowballed?
Half as many riders as they should expect even on a freezing Monday night in February. Also, they didn't consider at all the fact that there were 4 or 5 seniors' homes. 2 of them are Toronto community housing buildings. That wasn't even part of the dialogue at the commission table. I made my submission. I've continued to fight for it. Unfortunately, they were under enormous pressure at the time. You all may remember when the city was going through a period where they were just saying, cut everything, cut everything, cut everything, never mind the impact on people. But I'm being a bit of a dog with a bone on this one. I'm not going to let it go, and that's one of the reasons I'm raising it today.
Do you think you can restore the service to what it was?
I'm committed to. I want that to happen. It's up to the TTC, though, but I'm going to continue advocating. Yeah.
Okay. Samir Sinha, give us this from your vantage point of healthcare. You obviously start seeing people who are retired in their presumably 50s and 60s, all the way up to their 90s and 100s.
Absolutely.
Give us a sense of how that continuum works in terms of people actually planning for a retirement, not financially planning, but just what to do with life.
We have to remember, in 1900, your life expectancy was 51. When we actually created our social security system, we've come up with this age of retirement of 65, mainly because people weren't going to live any longer than that. Now, 2/3 of the people in the world today who've made it to 65 and older are alive. So we have more people living longer than ever before, and we should celebrate that. But that also means that when people are entering their retirement, when you turn 65 in Canada today, you're expected to live another 20 years. So it's something that sociologists like to call the third age. And it's the question is, how do you approach that? And, not all older people are created differently. I have 103-year-olds who put me to shame right now. And I have 65-year-olds who are quite sick and quite frail. I think the way we approach it has to be very open-minded, because we have to think about what are our health concerns, how do we keep healthy and keep active, and there are things we can do to actually extend our life, but also make sure it's quality life. And then we also have to think about where are we going to live, what are the services that we're going to need to have to be there, like Councillor Matlow just said, in order so we can stay engaged in our retirements as well.
Tell me the story about Baycrest, because your interest in seniors is not recent. You go way back.
Well, and it's not based on my current age, although if I continue to take care of myself, God willing, I will be a senior eventually. So it's not completely altruistic. I hope to, I hope to be able to benefit from the services we provide now. But when I was 13 years old, my parents admittedly forced me under duress to volunteer at Baycrest Home for the Aged. And I thought I was going to go in there and maybe help some people and contribute over a summer. What I learned from that experience was that it wasn't just me learning or giving to them. I learned a lot from their experiences. Not only were they more than happy to share their life experiences, such as that the regrets that many of them had were not things that they tried and messed up on, but were the things that they never did when they could have. And I really lived my life in a way that it reflects the experiences that I had that summer. Housing, speaking of Baycrest, is one of the top concerns that seniors tell us they have today. Not only do we have roughly 1 in 4 seniors in Toronto living in isolation, but there are so many who are looking for housing and they can't get in. We have thousands of people on our waiting list. We have a dearth of affordable housing. And my concern is that if we don't do something about it now, as the baby boom generation gets older, the wait list is going to outlive the people who are seeking the housing. So, the experiences that I had back then and then what I've learned from my constituents now make it very clear to me that if we don't act now, if we don't maybe talk a little more about priorities for the majority of us who are going to be over the age of 65 soon, rather than talk about, some of the silliness that we sometimes hear at City Hall, we're going to lose a window of opportunity.
I want to pick up on the isolation angle you just talked about, and I know that there are many people who work flat out for their whole working lives, Susan, and then they retire, and because they've worked flat out, they've got no hobbies, they've got no outside interest that they've established, and suddenly they're retired and they got nothing. How hard is it to pick up a hobby at that stage of life?
Well, it would be difficult. Luckily, we're, I think, seeing a different trend now among people who are reaching that retirement age, and I think that's important. And I think it's also something else that Josh said that was really important, and that is an explanation for why these problems are still with us. And what he's done in his lifetime is actually deal with older people, not feel that they were an alien race, and actually become empathetic. And that's what we actually have to have in public policy, and understand that people who are coming of a certain age at this point do not fit the stereotype. And what is more, politically speaking and socially and economically, they're not going to take it either. They're not going to accept the stereotypes that set them off as an afterthought, that they're going to be intending to say, well, I have choices, and I'm going to make them deliberately. And a lot of things that I tell my team at CARP is to say to them, you know, consider a person who is full of life, doing all kinds of things, loving, working, volunteering, all of those things, and then they turn a certain age, the clock ticks over. They haven't changed. The rights haven't changed.
The number changed.
The number changed. And so what you want to do in terms of public policy is look at that and say, well, there are scientific facts. They may have mobility and health challenges. They may have choices about work. So the system has to accommodate that. You don't just say, well, no, you've got to fit into our system. That has everybody speeding across intersections and racing across town in cars.
Louise, from your experience, do organizations that are looking for volunteers want older people to volunteer?
Yes and no. They always are looking for volunteers, but the concern is, you know, how long will you stay? Will you be able to come every day? When I was interested in volunteering, I put my name into 4 different types of organizations. And ironically, it wasn't the health groups that were interested in me, it was the literacy groups. And so I've done quite a bit of volunteer work with young people who want to learn to read and are trying to get to school, and I believe very much in that. And they don't care how old I am. They are just delighted that I'm willing to take my time to teach them something.
But anecdotally, one does hear stories about, oh, you're 70, 75?
Absolutely.
Maybe,
yeah, no, absolutely. As I say, I tried 4 different avenues, including legal work, which I was prepared to do for people for free, and nobody took me up except the kids, except the young kids. They're delighted. But, you know, there is ageism in our society, and for us to deny that, and what is ironic about it is, just as you've said, everybody's going to get there. There is,
if they're lucky.
We hope, yeah, luckily if they're lucky, that's right. And if they look after themselves, they have a good chance of getting there.
We hear how technology is changing our lives. We hear about it all the time. But what if you spent most of your life ahead of the technology curve? We spoke with 3 Ontario seniors about their relationship with 21st century technologies and what they think of everyone having a smartphone at the dinner table. Okay, I am going to start in our exploration of technology and seniors by asking the question that you're, I guess, theoretically never supposed to ask anybody, but I'm going to do it anyway. John, how old are you?
86.
86.
And counting.
Born where?
England.
Where?
In London, UK.
Beautiful. Okay, Michael, how old are you?
John's junior by 10 years, so I'm 76.
Born?
Going Edinburgh, Scotland.
Another one from across the pond.
Yes.
Okay.
We all flock here.
Very good. All right, Margaret?
And I'm 91.
You are not.
I am.
Hey.
91.
Beautiful. Indeed.
That does deserve a round of applause.
Thank you very much.
You look fantastic. Well
Thank
done.
you.
Huh. Okay, I would like to start by, Margaret, why don't you start us off? Describe, if you would, your relationship to 21st century technology. How is it?
I'm trying very hard. I have a Kobo reader, and I have my computer. I don't have an iPhone. If the computer is off, I just walk by it very angrily until I get it fixed, because I count on it a great deal. And I love my Kobo readers because I can take it with me if I'm going on a trip or something like that.
Now, I would have thought that you might be one of those people who says, if I can't read a book the way a book was intended to be published, as a book with paper and a spine and all of that, it loses something. No?
I would prefer having the book, but if I am going somewhere where it's not, you have too much luggage, or you just don't want to be bothered taking, or the battery runs down, then I use the Kobo. But I do prefer the book, and I do prefer a hardcover. Was
it a difficult transition?
No, because it was the times when I used it, it was a convenience, and that's why I liked it.
Okay, John, what's your relationship like with technology?
Oh, I use it all. I grew up on a Mac. I got in 1984 when word processing first came in. I use technology now because I teach watercolor painting to beginners and intermediates. And I do a step-by-step watercolor, and I photograph it at each stage with a digital camera. Then I write the text, and I upload it to my Flickr page for my students and anybody else. Then I use a flat-screen TV, and I use a memory stick or a DVD, and I play the images on the screen and repaint it in front of them. I'm also, I belong to a writers group, and we meet every 2 weeks, and we try to encourage young writers and so on. And I generally stay in touch. I'm Skype. I have 2 grandchildren, and sons live in Australia, so I Skype regularly with them. I just generally keep up to date. I haven't got a smartphone yet. I was talking to Margaret about this. I'm leaning towards the BlackBerry. I've still got an old-fashioned landline. But I embrace technology. I think it's just fine. I think it's a shame in some ways that it makes the working world more difficult because you can't get away from it. You have to take it with you, as you know. Yeah.
Okay. Michael, what's your relationship like?
Minimal.
Minimal, okay.
Minimal. I have a computer and no Facebook, although I have been invited recently to submit something that can be posted on Facebook. But that was the organization that invited me to do this.
And you had to fess up that you didn't have a Facebook account. You don't have a Facebook account,
I do not.
Okay.
As yet.
As yet. Right.
But you mentioned something that suggested the availability and the flexibility of having the computers and the Kobo readers.
Yes.
It allows you to move around.
So you do that?
Not as yet, but I'm working up to it. Actually, I'm working up to a laptop, because I found that I had something in mind. It was easier for me to tap it into the computer, onto the keyboard, where I can make corrections afterwards, grammatical corrections, than it is to be handwriting, really handwriting. Mine is very beautiful, but at the same time, it is faster on the computer, and it's something you can take away afterwards and check it out.
Now explain this to me. You are the youngest of the 3 of you here, yet you seem to have the least invested relationship with technology so far.
That's right.
Why is that, do you think?
Probably because when I started in ticketing, computers were not part of the box office, were not part of ticket sales. Now everything, printed home tickets, what's that? Until recently, I don't know what printed home tickets was, or the convenience, and it is very convenient to the consumer.
Might be interesting to find out how many of us do banking online. I have an Amazon reader, but yeah, I do banking online now.
You do it all?
Yes, I do
yes,
too.
I do.
You do too?
I do too.
Yeah,
yes.
and I have a Facebook.
You don't, I can tell.
I'd rather meet face-to-face with the teller.
So you don't even use an ATM?
I know how to use it, but I don't use it.
You don't
I'd rather go to the bank.
Interesting.
Yes.
Now, are you?
I'd rather interact with the staff.
But okay, based on your friends and their experiences, do you find yourself to be sort of unusually hostile to technological change?
Not really.
You're like most of your friends?
Yeah.
And Margaret, how about you? Are your friends more or less invested in technology compared to you?
I think most of them have computers, and but that's about as far as they go, you know, and cell phones, that kind of thing.
Now, one of the things I've discovered from you is you have had no trouble at all adapting to new technologies as it comes along.
No.
But I want to know whether or not that's typical of people who are in their middle 80s as you are.
I don't think I can answer that, Steve, because I've not done any research on it. I'm told that it's fairly unusual, but I just happen to grow up with it, so I need it for the jobs that I do, and I don't feel threatened by it. I really look forward to new technology, yeah.
My experience is that's unusual.
Oh, okay, I'll take your word for that. Yeah.
No, it feels on you.
It is too.
You think so too?
Yeah.
I think so too, but I think yours is on a need to know.
Yes.
And that and
That's well
that's
put.
a great reason for learning is the need to
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about, Margaret, do you feel that when the newest thing comes out that you have a need to know about it and you want to have it as part of your life?
No, as far as I've gone now, I want a BlackBerry, and I have a need to know how to run a BlackBerry.
Do you have any concerns that you won't be able to figure it out? Because I'll tell you, I have those concerns every time I get the next upgraded device. How am I going to remember all these new, bells and whistles and all of that stuff? Does that worry you at all?
Maybe because I don't know enough about it, but maybe when I see how difficult it is, I might back off a bit. But I saw on the internet the other day that there's a new pen out, and if you're writing with cursive writing and you're making an error, it starts to vibrate.
Really?
I thought that was fun. I'd like one of those.
I gotta have me one of those.
Yeah. Do you find, Michael, adopting new technologies to be somewhat daunting?
Not completely, but yes, it can be daunting. I'm still looking forward to the day that I do get a laptop. Now, it's more compressed. The keypad is more compressed. I have not actually worked one, but I guess it'll just take a little time to figure out the spacing and the amount of pressure that needs to be applied.
Do you use the internet now?
What's the internet?
No, you're kidding me on that one.
No.
Yes, I do.
You do use the internet?
Yes.
For what?
Really just communication in the ticketing industry. And they are networked all across the continent, really, for that matter.
But you're on email.
Oh, absolutely.
But not Facebook yet.
Not me.
No. Are you interested in Twitter?
What's Twitter?
Okay, that answers that question. So we're not into tweeting yet.
Not yet.
Okay, that's another one of those social media things like Facebook.
Adam is probably
Are you on Twitter?
No, Margaret and I were talking about this because coming from Britain, the word twit in British means you're stupid, you're an idiot.
It's the same thing here.
So to say how you were Twitter or Twittered, it's quite something different. No, I'm not on Twitter.
You're not on Twitter?
I'm not 140 characters?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think I could say anything in 140 characters.
You'd be surprised. You think you can't until you try it.
Maybe I should try it. I shouldn't be so biased about it. But I'm not sure who I'd twit with.
First of all, it is Twitter, but
okay.
the verb is to tweet.
To tweet.
One
That's
tweets.
right. You're quite right. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're not sure who you would tweet to?
I would tweet. Now, I'm not sure to whom I would tweet. No,
Right.
Yes. Maybe Margaret.
Oh, that'd be nice.
That sounds hard. Do you know what Twitter is, Margaret?
No, I wouldn't know if I was being tweeted or not.
Not the only one.
And what I would tweet, what it would tweet me to.
Well, it's not the kind of thing. You can do both output and input, meaning that you can tweet messages out to the world, but if you don't want to, you can just it's like a running news wire in a way.
Oh, really?
And you can just see all the messages coming in and follow what's going on in the
same
world.
like as your email, you don't have to read them.
Well, that's true too. That's true too. All right, what's the next? We've got a couple of minutes left here, and I want to find out from all of you, what's the next piece of technology that you think you are going to incorporate into your life that you don't yet have?
I think I'd probably like to get an iPad.
An iPad. Okay. After our discussion, you're sold on the iPad now.
Well,
but there's lots of different versions of it.
No, I don't
know
that.
Apple's got one, BlackBerry's got one.
Okay.
I imagine everybody's got one now. Samsung's got one.
Okay. Well, whatever's the easiest one, I'll have.
Which is the easiest? Do you know about this?
No, I don't. If you're asking me what I would like next, I would like Apple TV to come out with a system whereby I could take my keyboard and use my 42-inch flat screen as my monitor, and I'd like it to be completely interchangeable. I'm on Netflix now, but it's still pretty amateurish. I would like to be able to have that completely converged so that the flat screen TV is my monitor. I can watch television on it. I can watch programs. I can tape things and put it on, so it's completely interchangeable. I'm just waiting for that to come out. That I would embrace.
You are light years beyond me. I just want to tell you that right now.
Okay.
In your technological abilities, I got to say, I'm impressed. Okay. And that is the Agenda's Aging Week in Review. You can see all of those programs in their entirety on our website, theagenda.tvo.org, or on our iTunes channel, or on the YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.